one of our children, somebody we're close to, and we just become irate when somebody else has been involved in that. Offenses involving feelings of betrayal or gossip. In other words, I can forgive, but, terrible things have been said, and you can't ever take those things back. And so that presents a challenge to us in our ability to practice biblical forgiveness. Issues which involve trust. Any repeated behaviors already been mentioned. Intentional wrongdoing. We haven't even talked about that. It's when somebody purposefully has maybe tried to be offensive. Unwillingness to change. Again, primarily I'm interpreting that on the part of the offender. Those motivated by meanness or by revenge. Character attacks. And offenses against children. Also on the survey, I said, what have you found ineffective in advancing a forgiveness spirit? In other words, what have you tried that hasn't worked? Number one, trying to forget. Trying to forget. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Forget is not part of forgiveness. Yet oftentimes it gets thrown in to the same definition and understanding that we hold of forgiveness. So some of us have tried to forget, and it's still there. We still remember. And so again, we attach that and we struggle. Pretending it doesn't matter. Justification, either of self or of the other person, the offender. That's just the way they are. Well, is that just the way they're supposed to continue to be? If we're sanctifying ourselves in Jesus, dwelling in the grace house. You see, we have this justification. Time. Just let time heal all wounds. Just ignore this and it'll eventually go away. Not effective. A desire to get even has been ineffective. The thing about trying to get even is you never can get even. You never can get even. Forgetting your own faults. That's why when we began this whole thing, I wanted us to first of all understand how important it is for us to dwell in the grace house. And truth be known, most of us would have no problem dwelling in the grace house so long as we were the independent dweller. It's when other people move in that things go bad. But forgetting our own faults becomes one of our major problems in practicing forgiveness. Dwelling on being wronged. Have you ever been there? Where you just concentrate on how somebody has really just wronged. This was just not right. I have been wronged. Yeah. Release. Holding grudges. Ineffective. Continual criticism has been found ineffective. Waiting for offenders to apologize, repent, or ask for forgiveness. I'll forgive, but I'll tell you what, it needs to be asked for first. Pretty sure you probably aren't going to need to forgive if that's what you're waiting for. Avoidance. Avoidance. Just get out of the way. Doing nothing hasn't worked. Okay, 3 contributing factors that I think we're going to find contribute to our inability and ineffective attempts at forgiveness that probably are incorporated in everything that was said in that survey. I want to share 3 things that I think kind of summarize most of them. And the first one is this. One of the reasons we are so ineffective at forgiveness is because we attempt to maintain and to have and to hold control. And I put the clicker up there because that's a perfect example. When you have the TV clicker, you decide what's watched, what the volume is. You make all of those decisions. And, of course, there's some of us that, we do the multiple watching. And there's others that want it set and left. And so everybody, the clicker. We want the clicker when it comes to forgiveness. We want control. Now, let's look at some of the... Okay, let's talk about the way that control paralyzes forgiveness. Number 1. One of the ways that control paralyzes forgiveness is by unrealistic expectations. In other words, when I take on control, I develop this mindset that decides certain things need to happen. I expect certain things to happen. Some of those things I am tempted to develop are not very realistic. For example, one of the things that we might want control of is I want to be sure this never happens in the future again. So that's very unrealistic. And if my forgiveness is based upon that kind of control, it's not likely that I'm going to reach the full potential of forgiveness. I want a full understanding of all that has happened, all that's transpired. I want a complete understanding of it all. We want freedom from future offenses. We also desire a full understanding. If I just know the information, why did I get treated this way? And that's very unrealistic. We're never going to have all the information. Remember, we shared earlier, forgiveness is always an issue of the past. Some of that information we can't find if we wanted it. Even if it was desired to be shared, it's gone. It's history. But if we want full understanding, it's very unrealistic. We want people to be accountable and to acknowledge wrong. Now, people do need to be accountable, but that has nothing to do with forgiveness. And see, that's where we keep attaching these little sidebars to forgiveness, and forgiveness becomes corrupt. People do need to be accountable, but my forgiveness has nothing to do with people being accountable. My forgiveness is what I do for me, and what I do because I dwell in the grace house. And there may be other things that need to happen to hold people accountable. Remorse and restitution. It tickles me how our judicial system will always evaluate whether somebody was remorseful when they're being tried and the conviction is being pronounced. The person sat there with a smirk on their face, or the person cried. We look for remorse. Change. Unrealistic. Forgiveness may cause changes, but forgiveness doesn't have to have changes. Unrealistic expectation. Number 2, a focus on self-justification. Focus on self-justification. We want vindication, or we may fall into what we've talked about earlier, this victimization role. We are just plain the victim. We talk like a victim. We act like a victim. We think like a victim. That's all focusing on self-justification. Thirdly, a distortion of the offense. This is another thing that happens in control. All of a sudden, the offense becomes bigger than reality. It gets embellished. The story becomes greater than it really was. Number 4, projection is also a part of the control issue. We project what we think we know, but it's all a projection. It's always fascinating to me to hear people talk about, well, such and such is going to happen. Really? That's 100% projection. And we apply that often in this area of forgiveness. Well, if I forgive, they're just going to do it again. Well, first of all, that's projection. And second of all, so what? We're still supposed to forgive. I want to suggest that the elder son in the account of Luke chapter 15 provides a good example of somebody that wanted the clicker. As we read through this and as we look for the symptoms that he exhibits of longing for control, of how his lack of forgiveness is really focused on some of the things we've talked about. But he became angry, the elder brother, and was not willing to go in, and his father came out and began pleading with him. But he answered and said to his father, "Look, for so many years I've been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours, and yet you've never given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has devoured your wealth with prostitutes, you killed a fatted calf for him." Oh, man. What kind of unrealistic expectations does this elder son have? I'm not going to forgive this lousy, he doesn't even call him brother, this lousy son of yours until it's made up to me that I never did any of this stuff. Good example. The second thing that tends to make our attempts at forgiveness ineffective is the process of magnification. Magnification is the practice where we continue to make things bigger. Pain and suffering are exaggerated and make forgiveness difficult. There's a mindset that anchors to the thought, I will never trust again, and that hinders biblical forgiveness. And I wonder what would happen to us as parents if we adopted that kind of philosophy, if we decided we were never going to forgive, if we're never going to trust our kids again. Because there's not a parent alive that hasn't had a time in parenting when you didn't trust your children, when that trust was destroyed. But you didn't kick them out the door and say, sorry, never can trust you again. What do? We worked to rebuild trust. Quick pill? Quick fix? No. Difficult? Every time. But forgiveness demands that we let go of that kind of magnification. It also seems to bring great distortion to the motives of the offender. All of a sudden, we project all of these things about why this was done, what this person was hoping to accomplish, and it just becomes bigger and bigger. They were mean-hearted. There's just nothing good in these people. There was vengefulness. They just were trying to make this hurt. There was jealousy. They're just jealous. And this one's really hard. Betrayed. I was betrayed. I was studying for this lesson, and I thought, what biblically shows an example of magnification? And I thought of several things, and yeah. And then I started reading this story because it was kind of one that came in, and the more I read it, the more fascinated I got.